Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Cultural Warfare, written by Xavot. Yeah. Have you heard, Mithrax? It's over. The war is over. Mithrax, yes, Jan, my friend. It is most welcome news. I've been most anxious for many cycles now. Well, that's not all. The humans have officially been granted status in the Galactic Council. Most fortuitous timing for them to enter the council just as an era of peace is ushered in. Are they not a bit, inexperienced for such responsibility, though? They are indeed a young race. It was merely a byproduct of the war that they were discovered at all. Had the Arcadian fleet not made incursions into their surrounding stellar neighborhood, we wouldn't have bothered to make first contact for many more years. But when a sentient species is uncovered, it is policy to make introductions, even if such a race is all but doomed to be devoured by the Arcadians within the year. We were losing that badly? Oh yes, a colleague assured me that the war was not going well. Not well at all. His human friend told him of an expression for such a situation. On the ropes. I am told it comes from a primitive combat sport humans call boxing, and alludes to one fighter's imminent demise in a short time. A curious expression, and you feel it applies to the Galactic Fleet? He was quite adamant. The Council had already begun preparations for surrender when the humans were discovered. There was talk of skipping the first contact protocols altogether, and allowing them to simply be overrun with no warning. And indeed, the humans should have been overrun. But they are a strange species. Do you mean to insinuate that the humans fought back against the Arcadian Empire within a fortnight of exposure to the Galactic Council? Yes, in a manner of speaking. I was under the impression that race had scarcely left its own atmosphere. If the nets are to be believed, they had only just harnessed a rudimentary form of fission, and fusion was only theoretical when the single world. FTL, it would have been 100 or more years before they achieved such a goal. Yes, I've heard all the same assumptions, but, you must understand, the humans did not enter the Council after the Arcadian Empire sued for armistice, but because of it. Because of, how do you mean? Well, it seems the Arcadian battle nets are most secure, highly encrypted. Presumably the BattleNet contains the Arcadian fleet movements and tactical information. Heavens knows my department has been attempting to crack a single cipher since the outset of the conflict. Their civilian nets are significantly less difficult to penetrate. This was hardly of interest to our intelligence unit. Arcadian civ nets contain simple, rudimentary training and materials to prepare their broodlings for service. There is nothing of consequence at all on the nets. And as far as the news correspondence goes amongst their species, it is merely declassified facts and statistics about the conflict, systems conquered, and resources acquired. They publish such information openly. It is hardly a secret. Anyone with access to our own civilian nets can simply surmise when a system has fallen when it goes silent. As for resources, we believe it is meant to inspire a sense of triumph to see the vast wealth of the Empire on display. Oh, poor wretched broodlings would hardly ever get their claws on any such riches. So, how does the human race factor in? I do not understand how such a pathetic race with no fleet could be responsible for such an outcome. Turn the tide, a human might say. What do they mean? Tidal forces cannot be turned. They are at the mercy of gravitational forces. It is a human idiom. It simply means a reversal of balance of power. But that is beside the point. So the humans, having cracked a trivial encryption on the civilian nets, but not on the battle net, simply, started talking to them. You mean to say, with the Arcadian fleet bearing down upon their homeworld, they attempted to negotiate some kind of surrender? No. What I thought as well, but it was most curious. This small world, this one tiny, insignificant blue dot in the cosmos, has a vast wealth. They bartered for peace. What vast wealth could possibly be contained in a world, and why would the Arcadians simply not seize it when they heard of it? A fine addition to the collection, one would think. not the material wealth. They have some, but it hardly amounts to the rich resources of the Gaiety Prime.
I'm perplexed. Please get to the point.
Humans call it, culture. Apparently, many of them, possibly most of them, have nothing better to do than to imagine realities, to create worlds in their minds, and, more importantly, to share those in the forms of stories.
Stories? Culture? What nonsense is this? No story can make an enemy concede defeat. It is utter drivel. Your sources are incorrect. They have told you falsehoods.
Pull the wool over my eyes, the humans say.
Wool? What is wool, and how would it obscure your vision? You're speaking nonsense.
Apparently it is from the creature called a sheep in the human world. It grows immense quantities of fur, which is sheared off seasonally and used for clothing.
Fascinating. And this creature is not bothered by the relationship. Is it symbiotic or parasitic?
I believe it is primarily symbiotic in nature, though the human is clearly the dominant party. Back to the tale at hand. It is not just one story, but many, and through multiple mediums. And these stories are viral in nature. They take on a life of their own.
Words may persuade, but they are not capable of self-replication.
I believe humans have an idiosyncratic tendencies which allow them to process units of information differently than most species. They call it memetics, or simply a meme. The vastness of information they conveyed to the Arcadian net was astounding. Exabytes of information dumped into the nets for weeks on end.
But to what end?
Some information was seemingly trivial in nature. The humans have recipes, and being of similar protein-based diets, the Arcadians salivated over such a variety of meals. Immense creativity and care in how food was prepared, served, and consumed. It is also customary for the author of such a recipe to begin the instructions with a lengthy prelude describing their life story or state of mind, location, and mood prior to preparing the meal.
What function does this serve?
I cannot possibly fathom. But some of the Arcadians, seemingly enticed by the desire for sumptuous cuisine, read such tales in their entirety, and some began to, empathize with these primitive ape descendants.
A meal? It makes no sense. I feel that you are still conveying falsehoods.
I assure you, as bizarre as it sounds, this is the truth. Along with such simple things as recipes, the humans began to send deliberate lies, misinformation they called it. They created deepfakes using rudimentary AI and an innocuous software program called Photoshop. They took Arcadian imagery and distorted it, repurposed it, and fed it back into the nets. The Arcadian webmothers couldn't understand what was happening. The webmothers had no such lack of control over their broodlings in living memory. Broodlings were assigned a function and fulfilled it. No broodling would deliberately misinform its siblings with lies, but the humans most certainly did.
They are able to pass falsehoods and truth from their own nets. Truly fascinating. How could one discern a lie from the truth with such ease?
Hardly. Humans lie to each other extensively. They are well practiced, but more often than not they end up believing their own falsehoods, and has fragmented their society into many desperate factions.
Well, no wonder they've scarcely reached the upper atmosphere. A mere lack of unification would deny any race entry into the galactic scale.
Ah, but you missed the point. And that is exactly what they were doing to the Arcadians. And while the humans were adept at existing with differing opinions, factions, and even languages, the Arcadians had not such been disjointed since their galactic conquest began.
Humans have many languages. How do they unify and organize it all?
The diversity of human language, thought, and culture lies in the numerous ways in which human communities reproduced over generations. As they are yet very young species, many such cultural divides still exist, if not thrive. There exists an immense dichotomy in perceptions and worldviews that have persisted throughout human history. Even within their own minds, Humans are constantly changing their opinions or even hold within their own minds paradoxical thoughts, juxtaposed or confused.
Truly wondrous. To be able to alter your own perception of reality at will, not just in response to external stimuli, to at once perceive of something existing both in one state and another. It hurts my head to attempt.
Yes, it is quite peculiar. But humans have a term for such a state of paradox or unknown. I think they call it Schrodinger's cat, though I believe this could be mistranslated based on what I have been able to research about the, cat.
What is a cat?
I will have to show you some images later. There are multitudes of human nets. They appear immensely popular. We estimated it could succeed 20% of the entire data stores. Truly bizarre. I still do not comprehend the function of the cat. It may be dietary or involved in some kind of ritual worship. Possibly it is or was an apex predator on this world, Earth, which would explain why they revere it so.
An astounding revelation. Please proceed.
Yes, of course. In contrast to human ability to exist in both inner turmoil and societal chaos, devoid of unified vision or leadership, the Arcadian caste system ensures rigid controls of the ruling web mothers. Through sheer replication of the young broodlings, they simply overwhelm their opponents. The humans deduced, correctly it would seem, that given the high level of sapience in broodlings from what was on the civilian nets, that is, a divide between web mothers and broodlings was not necessarily innate, but rather it could be a result of conditions of the individual. Nature versus nurture, as they call it.
An astute observation, but a very risky gamble, to be sure.
As you say, they had barely reached the stars. They had no means to run or hide, so what choice were they left? I am told that they have a species on their own world called bees, which have some similarities to the Arcadian species. Within the beehives, there is a queen ruler who produces offspring, and there are workers who fulfill specific functions to benefit the hive as a whole.
The web mothers are queens, and the broodlings are the workers.
Precisely. But in the hives of these human bees, if the queen dies or is killed, the hive can live on.
How can the hive function without a leader? If they are leaderless, they should dissolve into chaos and have no unified goal. How do they self-organize?
In the hive of a human bee, any larvae might become a queen. Genetically, they all have the potential to become a queen. But it is through specific nourishment during their early development that the worker larvae can become a new queen ruler.
So each bee is the same genetic lineage, yet their function is as much dictated by the needs of the hive as through change made after birth.
That is my understanding. The larvae are fed royal jelly, which results in physically altering their form, resulting in an imminent queendom.
A curious idea, and to apply this theory to the Arcadian species with only circumstantial evidence.
Well, they were between a rock and a hard place, another human idiom. Their culture is laden with such expressions. They are quite catchy. Continuing on, this concept for humans is well established. They include it in their own tactical simulation games. In the human game chess, a pawn, the lowliest tactical unit, may ascend to the role of queen, the highest tactical unit. Furthermore, there is no limit to having multiple queens in the game.
So the humans extrapolated from nature and this tactical game chess, and decided that Arcadian broodlings had potential to be more, or at least to think that they could be more?
Yeah, exactly. Arcadians had never stopped in their conquest of the galaxy to ask why, especially the broodlings, as the primary strategy of the Arcadian fleet had been to overwhelm the opponent. Casualties were very high. The life expectancy of a broodling was very short, hence the rather rudimentary nature of the civilian nets. Broodlings learn specific functions of their role as assigned by the web mothers. Then they are shipped out and execute those functions until they are killed.
Which explains their expansionist empire, never ceasing, all-consuming. Web mothers remain centralized and hold all the power, while spawning endless waves of disposable broodlings to toil and die. And the humans chose to exploit this weakness.
They did indeed. in a completely unorthodox manner. They conveyed stories of peace, and they shared the tales of capitalists, self-made men, and overnight millionaires pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. Such outlandish lies, as if circumstances or luck played no hand in any of it. But there were broodlings who listened, broodlings who watched, broodlings who consumed some parts of the human information, culture, propaganda, their stories, lies, discourse. And through the vast exposure to information, they seemingly unlocked their potential for, free will. By the time the web mothers realized the vulnerability of their own civilian net, the damage was done. As I said, the information was mimetic. It was self-replicating. Some broodlings had begun to emulate and create themselves.
So Arcadian broodlings have evolved, but not physically, rather through the change in their perception of reality, or their own psyche.
Indeed. The dissenting broodlings could not be isolated and terminated fast enough to be silenced. It seems information truly is power, and the loss of control over the filtering and dissemination of their own information cost the web mothers their own power. The web mothers eventually shut down the civilian net entirely, but almost overnight pirate broadcast signals continued to spread information, and an entirely new network sprang up to fill the void.
The humans?
No, the Arcadian broodlings themselves. In the deluge of information were schematics for primitive machines, primitive programming languages, and methods and means of communication are so subtle and numerous one could not begin to comprehend. Dead drops, hidden messages, something called an enigma, and another called Morse code. The antiquated relics of humanity's past conflicts and wars. Amongst their own kind. They fought constantly, it seems, and still do.
Preposterous. The Galactic Council would never accept a race which had not unified itself in peace, let alone one that actively has its own internal conflicts.
They can, and they have, it seems.
So now the tide has turned, and not a shot has been fired by these humans.
Not a shot. They don't even have the capital ship to speak of.
Astounding. And what finally drove the Arcadians to seek an armistice?
The Empire had begun infighting. The web mothers and broodlings alike fought over which recipes they deemed most desirable. The broodlings also fought the web mothers over the bees hypothesis. They demanded that the web mothers release the recipe for royal jelly, and accused the web mothers of hoarding this precious jelly and preventing them from becoming queens. But what finally did them in was their infighting over opinion on human media, which extended to all levels of Acadian society. Web mothers fought each other and their own broodlings, and broodlings fought and quabbled amongst the broodmates. I am told the humans were even more clever and devious in how they released the information. They disseminated some stories with great care, gradually, over periods of time. They released human media programs in seasons, so as to story progresses, the audience becomes more invested in the tale. They released books and similar series arcs, so the story unfolded in chapters and books. I believe it is called a cliffhanger, when the author leaves the finale of the story in a state of disarray, instilling a sense of desire of more to come.
A precarious position indeed to find oneself hanging on the edge of a cliff, and presumably there is great distance from which you could plummet to your demise. The thought alone sets my digestive system in turmoil.
Agreed. The sensation would feel quite perilous.
These humans and their language, what curious metaphors, what strange similes, and the phrases, they are catchy. I find myself now thinking of them, and with them. Perhaps they are replicating in my own mind.
You don't know the half of it.
The half of what? Is the total amount of substance a known quantity? Otherwise, how can one be sure they have not surpassed 50% completion?
I am still unclear on this human saying. I suppose in this context, it just means our knowledge of the human language and meaning is far from complete. I believe I've used it correctly, but it is difficult to be sure.
So, these cliffhangers, did the Arcadian caste system in?
Yes, it appears many of the broodlings and some of the web mothers became so enamored in the various stories of human tribes that they demanded to know the conclusions. There is a televised program known as Lost, and a group of incomplete novels called Harry Potter, and even something called Star Trek, which all remain unfulfilled, and the protagonists in dire peril. I myself desire to know if the human called Jim and the human called Pam will ever express their desires for each other in a more complete manner. And even the human documentary Star Wars, which takes place in another galaxy entirely many millennia ago, is poised on a knife's edge, as the humans say. The conflict obviously has some resolution, or the humans would be extinct now, but my desire to know more has intensified after finishing the first film.
They originated in another galaxy.
So it would seem, if the documentary can be taken literally. My team still needs to conduct extensive research on the topic. Our current theory is that Earth reverted to a pre-agrarian society due to the conflict in the Star Wars somehow. We are still searching for clues in the documentary film. Supposedly, it is a trilogy, though I've yet to see the later films. But there is a contest over that point. Some amongst our own team assure me that the human contacts have seen an additional 3-film prequel and even a later 3-film continuation. But still others claim that you must observe only 5 of the original 6 films in machete order to accurately assess the story. Whatever machete means.
What madness! The human ability to sow discord with culture is becoming clear to me now. So it would seem that the Arcadian Empire is not the only race to partake in the human mimetics.
I assure you my team is only partaking in it for research purposes. There is a debate whether we would be susceptible to such a weapon, but the Council has tasked us with understanding this new cultural weapon. Last I heard, the humans were permitted to the Galactic Council in order to broker the peace between the Council and the Web Mothers, and they released the finale seasons of many hit shows to the new Broodling net to subdue the masses of hysterical Broodling factions who were demanding the Web Mothers provide culmination to the various sagas that they had become addicted to.
Human culture seems to know no bounds across sapient species.
Yes, I would agree. In exchange for brokering the peace agreement, the humans have been granted access to the galactic archives. They have begun in earnest to construct their own technologies based on the newly acquired information from the archive, and seem quite adaptable and rather industrious. The human ambassador arrived on their own first-generation FTL ship, though many believed our technology was gifted to them from the Arcadian Empire. I was told that the coveted technology was delivered in exchange for exclusive access to the remaining 2 seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I've yet to see it, but the Arcadian broodlings were positively obsessed with it, and upon the resulting end of Season 5, with no more available episodes, they overthrew their own capital world in a riot.
Simply unbelievable. And so now that the broodlings have their demands met, do you think that they will rise up and overthrow the Web Mothers? Or has this already happened in the capital world riots? Is there any possible merit to the Queen Bee theorem, and humans will walk amongst us in the stars within a year of finding out they are not alone in the galaxy, teeming with sentient life, bringing their chaotic culture with them?
Who can say for sure what will happen? For now, as the humans put it, give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt, which I believe means the humans intend to distract the Arcadians from future galactic conquest with these recipes and TV shows.
But for how long can humans keep them distracted? Surely they'll run out of media content soon.
I am not so sure. From all that I've seen and heard thus far, they appear to have a limitless supply of imagined realities. I've heard tell of a new medium of human entertainment recently released to the Broodling net in the pantheon of human creativity. They call it a video game. Apparently, it is not unlike our own simulations used for vocational training, though the humans have adapted it merely as an educational tool, but as another avenue for storytelling. I have been assigned to study the game series Halo next cycle to understand human kinetic weapon systems and armor next cycle.
Completely bizarre. What strange creatures these humans are. I simply must do more research into this human culture and its apparent power to captivate and enthrall. So they have been given Galactic Council status then. It is no joke.
They have indeed. The human ambassador remarked that when they came to the table brokering a peace deal, accepting their newly acquired council status, it was like killing two birds with one stone.
What are these birds? Why are the humans at war with them? Or have the humans already conquered them, as well as their culture?
End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.